welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and in this overview video, we're going to be checking out a game called Veilwrath from Tristan Hall and Hall or Nothing Productions. Now, if you're familiar with Gloom of Kilforth and Shadows of Kilforth, then you'll be familiar with the designer of this one, as I've done playthroughs of those previous games from him on the channel. I'll put links to those in the top right-hand corner so you can go check them out if you want, but this video is going to specifically focus on Veilwrath as it's arriving for backers in the very, very near future. You'll see a full setup video as well as a number of different rounds throughout the gameplay, and also get to see whether or not I'm able to actually succeed at a vignette. So without further ado, let's go ahead and set up our very first game of Veilwrath. The first step of setup is to place the 3 action power tokens in order 1, 2, 3. Each of these power tokens are currently on their basic side and represent each of the different actions you can potentially take, and we'll be placing those action cards underneath in a moment. But first I want to show you that the values associated here can potentially go from the basic side that you're seeing to the advanced side in future plays, jumping these numbers up. Similar to what you see above, we have the different actions all in a row. We're going to start in alphabetical order with Explore, then Fight, and then Influence to ensure all these are set up correctly. It's also worth mentioning these have an advanced side as well, but we're always starting on the basic side for this setup. There is one variant here that can take effect during setup. If you want to play the beginner variant, you're able to flip one of these different power tokens to its advanced side. But for me, going forward, I'm going to leave them all on their basic side. Step number 2 is to set up the spirit dial. This is going to represent the Veilwrath's remaining spirit, and we need to set this to 20. Step number 3 is to set up the power tokens. We're going to gather all of them and set them to one side out of play, but within easy reach. For this overview video, I'm going to place the power tokens very close to where my major actions are, as I'll be drawing from this pile quite often. Step number 4 is to build your memory deck. You're going to find 20 basic memories, and as you can see, I've got 2 of them right here in front of you. Right down here, there is a keyword basic. You'll be looking for this to ensure you've got the 20 correct memory cards you start out the game with. This deck is going to change and upgrade over time, but these cards to begin will all be basic. There should be a total of 20. Shuffle them together, and you won't be drawing any into your starting hand to begin until the first round starts. After shuffling those 20 memory deck cards, place them in a pile to the left of the action cards. Just like that, we are now ready to move to the vignette and begin the threat deck stacks. The base game comes with 5 vignettes, and if you have the expansion for Veilwrath, you're going to have up to 20 vignettes in the end. We'll start off with vignette number 1, which on the back states, "In life, the rune goblin was king beyond death, wielding sickness and sin." Flipping over the vignette, we now have setup instructions on the card. I'll show you up close what those are. Now, just before we move into one of the more important steps of setup for Veilwrath, let's talk about the game objective overall. Now, Veilwrath is played over a series of games or vignettes, which together make up a campaign. Each game, the Veilwrath selects a vignette to play through for that game, and for the first game we're obviously choosing vignette number 1, which is called The Lost Ruins. In each game, the Veilwrath must collect 5 keys, so that is us, and defeat all of that vignette's foes, all whilst evading the watchful eye of the Archfiend. Once we have collected all 5 keys and defeated all the vignette's foes, only then can we try to reach the portal in time to escape back beyond the veil and win the game. Let's quickly talk about the victory and defeat conditions. These are really important. For victory, we need to collect all 5 keys and have revealed and defeated all the vignette's foes, even if other threats are still in play, and defeat the portal that arrives in our threat area. And we lose this game if we happen to run out of spirit. That's one of the ways, and you saw the dial we set to 20. If that drops all the way down to nothing, we lose the game. Or if we encounter the Archfiend in the threat row. If that happens, we also lose the game. We'll talk in a moment about setting up ribbons for a campaign, but every time you lose a game in one of those 2 ways, either loss by spirit or a loss for encountering the Archfiend, we lose a single ribbon. Now, when you take a look at a vignette card here, you'll see which number you're currently on. You'll also see the title. You'll see where any foes are listed, as well as what stack you should set them up in. And don't worry, we'll be going through that whole process in a moment. For vignette number 1, we're going to be dealing with the Goblin King in stack number 4. It also states here, riches, defeated keys are going to give us a spirit boost of +1, which is pretty nice. This value here on the far left-hand side is an Explorer value on the vignette, which determines how difficult it is for us to find the portal through which the Veilwrath, which is us, must escape to win. Now, at the very top of the vignette, it's going to list out not only the card we need to grab to put together this threat deck, but also how many of each we should grab. Now, before we go ahead and create the threat deck, we need to talk about the keys. Remember, 5 keys we need to find. This is one of them, the key of sight. We also have the key of love. We have the key of light. We also have key of power. And finally, the key of valor. To begin setting up the decks, you're going to be building them out in stacks, and you'll be placing one of these key cards to start each of the stacks. So you can see here we have 5. Now, the key here during this threat deck build is you need to ensure while creating the stacks you actually don't know what goes into them. So go ahead, flip all those keys over, shuffle them up, and then create 5 stacks face down to start. So we've got 1 card in each of them. Each of them is a key. The next thing we need to look at is go back to the vignette and look at the foes that need to be added in. The vignette will tell you right inside this area here which foes you need to deal with. And remember, as I mentioned during the victory conditions, the foes all need to be taken down, as well as finding all 5 of the keys. So knowing who the foes are and making sure you take them out is very important. In this one, being that it's the first vignette, quite simple, it's the Goblin King. So we're going to place the Goblin King, as it states here, in stack 4. Looking at our 5 stacks, I'm going to go ahead and place the Goblin King like so. Next is all about building out the threats, and we talked about this before when we mentioned the top section of this vignette here and basically telling you which card you should be grabbing and how many. The one thing to remember is there's going to be multiples of each of these cards inside the base box. So for instance, the Enforcer may have much more than the 3 it calls for in vignette number 1. If that's the case, then you're going to shuffle all of them together and pull 3 at random. Just because the artwork is the same on the card doesn't mean that the iconography or even the description in the center is going to be the same. So matching the vignette number 1 at the very top here, we have 3 Enforcers, 3 Fighters, 3 Goblins, 3 Healers, 4 Hobgoblins, 4 Mystics, and 4 Pariahs. Once you have all your threats laid out, go ahead and combine them into one deck, shuffle it up really good to make sure it's mixed, and now we're going to go ahead and distribute them across all the stacks we created where the keys were, as well as the Goblin King, which is in stack number 4. So we'll go ahead, starting with stack number 1, we're going to draw cards face down into each stack until we run out of cards from our threats. And the other thing to make notice of is the fact that each of the decks should have a total of 6 cards. So again, remember, you place the Goblin King in here. So when it comes down to the final 4 cards, they're going to go in every other deck but that one. And any other unused threats that you have out on the table when you are pulling all those together, you'll remove those and put them back in the game box. All the threat cards have been placed on top of the keys, but now we need to shuffle each individual stack together. So we're going to start with stack number 1 here. We'll shuffle that by itself. Stack number 2, we'll shuffle that by itself. 3, 4, and 5, same thing. And then once all of them are individually shuffled, we're going to start stacking them on top of each other, starting with 4, which will go on top of 5. 3 will go on top of 4 and 5. 2 will go on top of 3, 4, 5. And then finally 1 will be on top of all of it. And at that point, we have staged the threat deck. Just like that, we've got the threat deck all put together. There's a discard pile to the left of it, just like there's a discard pile to the left of my memories deck for me. Now we move into step number 6, where we need to find the Archfiend card as well as the Portal card. Here is the Archfiend card, and as you can see on it, it states to shuffle into the threat deck when the threat deck is reshuffled, and if it's played, you lose. So just like I was talking about in the lost conditions, the second this thing comes out of the threat deck, you're in trouble. Now you'll notice it's not in there right now. It only will be thrown into that threat deck once we go through the 30 cards that we staged in there. Once we burn through them and it needs to be reshuffled, that's when the Archfiend knows you're taking a bit too long and is going to come looking for you. On the positive side, there is a portal, and this is something that we're trying to get to, but the only way that the portal comes into play in the threat area is if we have all 5 keys and all foes, the Goblin King in this particular vignette, are defeated. And once that happens, this portal card will show up in the threat row, and this icon right here, if you remember from the vignette, matches with the icon that was on the left-hand side of that vignette card, which stated a 3, which means we need to do a 3 explore action in order to get through the portal. Now, as we are beginning a brand new campaign starting in vignette number 1, we get to start with 5 ribbons, and that is going to be step number 7. And the final step of setup is to return all other components back to the game box, and to quicken future game setups, all the foes and the threats should be stored in alphabetical order. This will really help you out when building out your decks. The next thing to mention is you'll notice these crystals kind of came out of nowhere. I just placed them there as the game provides them to use for tracking purposes as you go through gameplay. You'll see how they're used when I run into it. The game also comes with a handy icon definition reference card you're going to want to keep close so that you can understand each and every icon that is important, and on top of it, a round phase summary. And that, my friends, is going to wrap up the setup so we can head right into the very first few rounds of gameplay to give you an idea as to how this one flows. But first, let's go ahead and read some narrative text, get an understanding of the world and what we're doing here. A hush settled across the land beneath the obsidian skies. The fighting bad all but ceased. There was a hissing from the trees as they recoiled from the broiling mists, their branches curling up and twisting into ash, then blowing away on the breeze. As the stars faded in the sky, the terrible silence was deafening. The gathered legions were not even trying to attack the walls of the city. They were trying to escape. The Templars of the Rose Bad known all along it was his coming. The Overlord had sent forth his minions within the gloom to prepare the way, and now the masses of black figures swarming outside of the gates of the sprawl turned as one to face what was coming. Far through the darkness beyond the ruined plains, upon the horizon, a halo of red light coalesced. The circular light brightened and stretched, growing impossibly in size. The silence was shattered as a booming thunder rumbled beneath the earth, and the ground began to shake. From both sides of the walls, screaming, shrieking, and wailing filled the air as thousands of souls cried out to the heavens in despair. Figures fell from the highest walls and towers, some throwing themselves off. A single, terrible, discordant musical note pierced the air, a blaring, otherworldly hornpipe loud and clear throughout the land, clutching their ears and falling to their knees as utter hopelessness crushed them. The people collapsed in great throngs. The klaxon sound deepened and fell quickly through the octaves until it violently seizured the bodies of the now writhing shapes scattered in and around the city. Then came the rending. As the circular red light continued to grow and the thrashing, shuddering tone amplified, the earth shook and suddenly snapped, burling upwards huge city-sized chunks of rock and debris. A depthless chasm ripped the ground asunder as though giant hands had torn the earth apart. Buildings and entire streets buckled and fell into the abyss, along with screaming hordes of bodies. The plates of the earth shrieked and shifted, and as the giant mountains of land that had been thrown into the sky descended, a fathomless ash cloud blackened the heavens, and so the world ended. Ribbons of silver light weave their way through the veil, fleeting souls soaring through the ether fabric of what has been left behind. fewer in number with each passing moment. A colorless, shadowy realm engulfs the senses. As the silver ribbons fade into the impossible distance, terrible loneliness pervades in this twilight of emptiness. Then, from nowhere, a voice, indivisible from reality, melodic, benign, and utterly compelling. "He has gone too far," the lady whispers. After what seems like eons, the realization dawns. She is talking to you. At this point, we're ready to go through the gameplay, the flow of the game, and give you an idea as to how this vignette pans out for me. But we're going to leave this round phase summary here for the first few rounds so that we can follow it to ensure you get an understanding of how the game goes. We're starting off with the threat. We always start with start of round effects and abilities if there are any, which there aren't right now. The next thing we're going to do is go ahead and draw and play one threat into the threat area. So from the top of the deck, a new threat arrives. And it appears that luck begins on our side. As we know, within each of the stacks that are within this threat deck, there were keys, and these keys are something we need. They also give you a bit of a break from the bombardment of the threats that come from this deck, so getting these one out of the gate right away is pretty awesome. The downside is we're not really ready to obtain it just yet, as the explore action to get it requires a 7. The key was an awesome first find, but it is worth mentioning in this threat step right here, we have to activate any played abilities, if any. In this case, the key doesn't have any. It would have the keyword played right in that central area there at the bottom of the card. You will see this come into play on other threats that will come from the deck, but it's always good to check that area the second the threat is revealed. The next step of the round is to draw. We're going to draw one memory into our hand. So as I mentioned earlier, you don't start with a bunch of cards in your hand. You're going to draw them as you go along, choose whether to play them or whether to hold on to them for later. You can at max have up to 6 cards in hand, and there will be a point in time during the round where you need to discard down to 6. So you can potentially have more than 6 for short bursts of time. So we'll go ahead and draw a card to start things off here. We got Memory of Honor. So at this point, this card is in my hand. I'm placing it here just for a moment as I'm going to go ahead and explain a number of different things you can do as we move into step number 3, which is play in any order a number of different things here. First, we can play any number of memories we wish. That means they can be played straight from our hand out onto the table, which could be something like this, Memory of Honor, which if played would give us, as you can see down here based on this icon, it's very small, it does match this icon right here, which is influence. It would give us a 1, meaning this action right now, if we took this action on this card, because these are 3 actions available all the time along the bottom row, if you take one of them, this one would be Explore. It's at a value of 1 right now. This is Fight, value of 2. This is Influence, value of 3. If I played this card with this Influence action, it would bump that 3 up to a 4. Now, there are a number of things you can do when you're inside of this play phase. You'll see here that you can also combine. So you'll notice on this card for Memory of Honor right now, it has a shield icon with a 1 inside of it. All your basic cards will have that. And what's going to essentially happen is if you happen to have a number of cards in your hand over time because you haven't used them and you wish to combine them in order to boost one of these major actions that you just saw me go over, Explore, Fight, or Influence, you can cash in or discard 2 of the cards in your hand, and you'll go ahead and gain an additional power-up token for that particular action you'd want, which would be a +1 to it essentially. So that's going to be the combine action. It says right here you can do it a limit of 5 power tokens per action though, so you can do it up to a certain point, and that's it. The other thing you can do down below is tilt. You can essentially just tilt a card on a 45-degree angle, and it's considered one action to add 1 power token to it. So for instance, we know that I need to do the explore action at some point, and I need to raise the value of this thing up quite a bit to get that key. It needs to be a 7. Now, the other thing that hasn't been shown yet, because we haven't gotten there, is that these actions can switch positions, which means eventually we could potentially get this explore card over here, which means that it would be a value of 3, but it's still not going to be the 7 that we need to get that key. So why don't we start boosting it up in advance? So we could could tilt this explore card or action, and we would get to place a +1 power token on it, again planning for the future. The other icon you may have noticed on the card that's in hand, which will no longer sit on the table as we go forward, is this wisp over here, and it just denotes the power of the card. You'll see these wisps change as you actually upgrade your deck, there for no other reason than just to reference the power that this card has. So for now, this card is going to go into my hand and will no longer be on the table. The next thing we can potentially do here is we could use an action, and it's only one use that we're allowed to do. So we're allowed to tilt one, we're allowed to use one, and if we choose to use one of these actions, obviously we can't use the one we've tilt. We'd have to use fight or influence, and if we choose to use it, it's a full 90-degree turn to say that we've used it, and this is where the game gets really, really interesting. Now, as of right now, we don't have any major reason to use any of these except for the purposes of potentially using the revolving mechanic that's inside of this game that's really interesting. If I use influence, I get 3 right now, but that's not going to give me anything. However, I can still do it. What ends up happening is this card then shuffles down all the way to the bottom. And now you can see the explore action is slowly working its way up to the top. This is a game mechanic that's really handy and allows for a lot of options in your strategy when you're trying to deal with foes or threats or keys that show up in that threat area. Now, the other thing you can see here is it says key ability. You can turn and or flip a key in the play area. Now, of course, you have to obtain a key first to be able to do that. So we're not going to talk too much about that or show you anything about it until I potentially get this key of valor that I've got my eye on. And if things work out, then maybe we can go ahead and make use of the awesome abilities on it. I'd love for that to happen. And that essentially sums up the play area of this round phase summary. Now, we haven't seen everything fully happen yet, and you will see how this really makes impacts in some very interesting strategies once the threats start flying out the door at us. But I just want to go over this at a high level again. The combined one is only going to be handy once you have 2 or more cards in your hand, so you can actually start combining cards for that shield icon value down below in order to boost up other cards, or other actions, I should say. And then down below here, the tilt, you want to take advantage of this every time you can. There's really no reason, unless there's some specific mechanic within the game that'll actually penalize you for potentially powering up certain actions. But in vignette number 1, boosting cards with +1 power tokens is a very good idea. You don't want to forget about it. And then the use of an action, well, you're going to be using actions a lot. Just remember, you only get the availability to tilt once, and you only get the availability to use an action once. So in this situation right here, used an action, tilted an action, can't do anything with this one. And of course, if we actually had a key in our possession, then we would have the keys stored in the top right-hand corner area, and we could use them on our turn. Again, we'll see that later, but that sums it up. That's all I want to do for this play phase of the round. So now we're going to move to the spirit one, which is all focused on just taking a look at the threat row here and determining if there's any negatives to our overall spirit. Right now I'm at 20. There is no negatives to the spirit because there's no threats in play. So we're good there. Nothing that's going to hit our spirit. That's great. So now we come to the end phase. And as you can see here, you have to discard any played memories you've used. So for instance, if I had to use this card from my hand in order to try and boost up my actual influence action down below here for 1, this card would go in the discard pile, but it doesn't right now because I didn't use it. It stays in my hand. The memory limit just lets you know that you have to stick to 4 memories max in your hand. I am definitely under that right now. The actions reset. So this is where all the major actions on the game board are going to go back to their original positions. End of round abilities will activate, if any, and then a new round begins. The game flows extremely fast once you get going. So just to show you exactly what happens when we go ahead and we reset or rotate our actions back, it's as simple as that. Just a quick rotation, they're back and ready to go, and we start right at the top with a threat. So at this point, you've seen the round phase summary. I'll touch on things specifically we haven't actually seen happen yet once we hit them, but going forward now, we can pick up the pace. Let's find out what our threat is for this upcoming round. We have a Mystic. Now, this is actually a very interesting card to get at this point in time, so I'll have to explain my way through this one. But as you can see here, it has the played keyword I was talking about. The second a threat goes in the row, you got to look for those and play it out. So it says, reveal threats until you reveal a key, and then put it into play. Shuffle and replace the rest back on the threat deck. This is pretty crazy because it's actually thematically, because we found a mystic, finding another key attached based on the fact we found this mystic. So we are pulling another key from the deck. So I'm literally going to be grabbing cards until I find a key. So I'll continue going through these until a key does pop out. Should be about, and because we got the first key so early, might take a bit to find the next one. There it is, the Key of Light. So, as it states here on the card, you place it into play once you find that other key. Thank you, Mystic, for drawing that out for us. And then you shuffle and replace the rest of the cards you pulled out back on the threat deck. So I've got the whole pile here, shuffled it back together, and I'm just going to place it right on top. Now, this is important that you do it like this and not mistakenly shuffle the entire deck back together with those discarded cards, because that would obviously throw off the entire balance of this vignette. You're just shuffling the cards that came off the deck when you were trying to find the key and then placing them back on top. But at least at this point in time, we've got two keys to go after, but a mystic with a really nasty -2 to my spirit at the end of every single round. That's going to hurt, and we're going to need to use our influence at a value of 4 to get rid of her. So let's go ahead at this point and draw a card up. We got ourselves Memory of Knowledge, and it states right here, swap any 2 actions on the action power track. That is a perfect card for what we need right now. This is where the fun and the strategy within the game really starts to come out, and you're going to see it be very simplistic at the beginning, and then the choices you have to make in terms of what cards you're tilting, using, flipping, rotating, all that kind of stuff are going to have a big time impact on how well you do. So what we've got here is 2 cards in hand. Remember, I could go right now if I wanted to and combine them. I could toss both these cards because of the shields in the bottom left hand corner in order to combine them and add a +1 power token to the equation. Now later on, when your decks get stronger and built up even further, you'll have cards that have higher shield values, but you always take the lowest of them. So for instance, if I had upgraded my deck to a point where these were both 2 each in the shields, and then I combined them, I would get a +2 in terms of the power-up tokens going onto one of my actions, which would be really handy. The other thing to note is power-up tokens in and of themselves are not spent if you don't actually need to spend them. So for instance, if this individual here only needed a 2 Explorer, I could just go like this to use it for its 2 value, take care of the mystic, toss it. This power token would not be discarded. But that's not our current situation right now. The mystic is a 4 for influence, which sits at 1 right now and is very difficult for me to make happen. But one thing I can do to speed up that procedure is use a card that I've got in my hand just now. And again, when you're doing the play phase, you can do your actions in any order you want. So we're going to go ahead and spend a memory card here, Memory of Knowledge, to swap any 2 actions on the power action track. This card goes in the discard immediately, and there is, as I mentioned at the end of the phase, a step for discarding cards, but I choose to do it as I actually play them. It just makes it quicker. I'm going to obviously go ahead and switch influence with my fight, which will make my influence a lot stronger. If I was to go ahead and use it for an action, I get 3 now, but still it's not enough. I need 4 for the mystic, but guess what? The first card that I pulled was Memory of Honor, which is a +1 to my influence. I'll use this card now for 1 on top of the 3. We're going to use this action, and that is going to take care of the mystic. Looking pretty good, looking pretty good. So the mystic, just so you guys are aware, is in a discard pile, which is just the left of the threat deck here. We've got 2 keys already sitting in the threat area, which is pretty exciting. And down here, we haven't tilted anything yet to power something up. So I think I'm going to continue to boost up the Explore, because as you can see on these ones, although it might be quite small from distance, this needs 7 and this needs 8 in order to obtain it. So we have some work to do to get those keys. And this is one of the things about the balance of the game that I really like. Even though the keys came out early and you'd assume that that's a good thing and you've got a big time leg up now, it actually can hurt you at times because you haven't had enough time to really focus in any one of these actions and boost them up, and now you're almost thrusted into going after Explore, for instance, and boosting up rather than Influence or Fight, which means when threats come out, you are going to be in some tough decisions ahead in terms of where to put your priorities and when to grab the key and when to wait. The next phase we go through is the Spirit phase. So at this point in time, if the Mystic had still been in the threat area, I would have taken a -2 to my Spirit, knocked me from 20 down to 18. Thankfully, I was able to take it out before that, so nothing bad happening to me there. And we can now move to the end, so everything is going to be reset on my cards down here, and we're drawing another threat. But there is one major change that occurred. This Influence card was the one that was used in an action up here, and when you use a card in an action, that's what triggers the rotation. So the Influence card that was rotated over here moved down to the end of the row, the rest shuffled up, pushing the Explore action up to 3. It's important to do that rotation the second that you actually go ahead and use the action. I find if you wait too long in the round to do that, you're going to run the risk of not revolving those cards around, and you may miss out on an opportunity to boost something up that you're trying to get to the top of the charts. Next threat coming off the threat deck is a Hobgoblin, and this one states, played, shuffle your discard pile into your deck. Now, this may not seem like a nasty thing right now, but each of these vignettes have their own fun way of messing with you. There are some cards in this threat deck that are going to start once we take them out. Instead of them being discarded like we did with the Mystic, they're actually discarded into your deck. And then when they're played by being drawn up into your hand at a certain point in time during the round in the future by a Hobgoblin, for instance, possibly forcing you to shuffle it into your deck, you're going to have a card that comes in your hand that literally gives you nothing. So the game has ways beyond just toying with you in terms of what actions you use, how you rotate cards around, how you flip them, turn them, tilt them, all that stuff. The deck itself for the vignette is messing with you as well. It's also worth noting on this Hobgoblin, in order to take it down, we're going to need a fight 4, and on the far right, a Spirit hit of -1 when we get to that phase in this round. These are the 2 cards that are sitting in my discard pile currently. They're going to be shuffled into my deck right now. Now I'm going to go ahead and draw a card from the top of the deck now that's been all shuffled in, and we got Memory of Cold. It says ignore a spirit cost of 1 threat this round. So we could actually use this card to negate and completely ignore this Hobgoblin's spirit -1 if we can't deal with him. And I need to make a correction here for the very first round of the game. This will likely help me out because I should actually have 1 more card in hand than I do currently, and I'll tell you why. So when I started the game off, I got a key right out of the gate, and then I showed you that I tilted a card, and then I also used a card in order to tilt full 90 like so. And when you do this, you actually have a choice as stated on the card here. You can use it for the action it depicts, so a fight action for this one, or influence, or explore at the value it says. And again, at that point in time, having just a key here, nothing I would have used across these actions would have actually given me a key, and I stated you could just go ahead and do it, which you can, but you do get a benefit still. You get to draw a memory card, and I didn't do that. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that card now, as there's no ripple effects from me drawing it, although there might have been a change in what card I would have gotten, seeing as the Hobgoblin came into play and forced me to shuffle 2 cards back into the deck. But I wanted to correct that with you guys and let you know that if you choose to take an action, you can choose to go ahead 90 degrees to take the value that's depicted above to use it against something in the threat area, or you can just use it to simply draw a card. It's another way to have options on your turn. So I'm going to go ahead and take that card I should have taken before, and we got Memory of Blood. And actually this works out perfectly, as there is, and I did not stage this, as there is a fight 2 right here, and I have a fight action with a 2, and we needed 4 for the Hobgoblin. So guess what card I'm using right now? I'm going to discard this card, which will allow me to turn this as an action Getting to using that card I just put up here mistakenly, not in the top left, but way down here near my discard pile. And that is going to remove the Hobgoblin from play, which is awesome. So I don't have to use the other card that I just got in hand here at the beginning of the turn, allowing me to negate some spirit cost. I can hold on to this for later when we get into another situation, maybe when we're trying to grab the keys and more threats come out. I've also gone ahead and tilted my Explorer card over here, and the one thing to note is that again, when I use this for an action, I should immediately bring it down the line, which would just swap these two positions, like so. So we get to move right to the next round. We'll reset everything. And we're getting closer now. You can see we have 6, and the first key is going to need 7. Now, there's 2 keys here. We don't have to go in order. I can go after the one on the far right if I want to. That threat area is open season. So let's go ahead and draw a card for the threat area and see what we find. We got ourselves a healer. So this one is interesting. It says right here, when played, you gain 1 spirit. So right at the gates, we would tick our spirit up if we were hurt, which we are not. But what it also says here is we need to have 4 influence to take the healer out. Otherwise, it's going to hit us for a spirit every single time we get to the spirit phase. But when we do eventually take the healer down, the healer will heal us up by 1, which is kind of nice. For my hand, I drew up Memory of Might, which is going to give me a +1 if I go ahead and decide to do a fight action. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tilt this one right here to give me the +1. You'll see now for next round I'll have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which is enough to go after one of the keys. We still have to work all the way back up to 8 to get the second one, so you can see this is not going to be easy and will take time, but I'm getting there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually use this fight one here. It's at the bottom of the row, so when I go ahead and use this action like this, it doesn't shift positions at all because it's already at the end of the row, but I'm going to use it to draw a card, hoping that I can get something that will boost up my influence because, well, that would be really handy. Let's see what we get. No, we got Memory of Blood. This will boost up a fight action. So for now, that's going in my hand, and it doesn't look like I'll be stopping the healer from hitting us for 1 spirit at the end of my turn, but I do have Memory of Cold, which I didn't end up using on the Hobgoblin, but I will use right now to stop the healer from hitting our spirit. So we go right past the spirit phase, no damage through. The card that I used to stop it goes in the discard, and we're now at the end here. Now the crazy thing to think about is every single time a card comes into the threat area and you don't deal with it on that turn, that threat is still there for later. So you can see that it becomes exponentially harder to control the threats that are up top there if you let them just kind of fester and sit out there. You can ignore 1 or 2 here and there, but eventually those can really stack up and start driving your spirit into the ground. So for the end of the round, I've already gone ahead, as you saw, tilted everything back up. We're ready to go. Let's find out what next threat is coming our way. Not really looking forward to seeing what this is. Oh, it's the Hobgoblin again, another one of them. So this one is coming out. It's going to need a fight 3 to take out, and I have to shuffle my discard into my deck. I do currently have 2 cards, so Memory of Cold and Memory of Blood will be going back in. Now it's time to draw a card up and see what I get after shuffling those cards back in. We got Memory of Veil. Look, this one has Explorer. That's good. This is where things get really interesting when you have a number of different threats in the row that you need to deal with because they're going to hit your spirit. I'll get -2 in total, drop me from 20 to 18 if I don't take care of both of these. Plus I got some keys, and even if you have everything you need to get a key, sometimes going after that may not be the best idea, but in other situations it can be, because again, if you use an action and you're rotating things around, you might bump one of these actions up to a higher value that can help you with some of the threats you're dealing with. Although again, remember, you can only use 1 action in a given round unless you have a card in hand that lets you do more than 1 action, which I do have in this deck here somewhere, but don't have any of those in my hand yet. The only cards I have in my hand right now are going to help me with fight action. So if I do a fight action, I can boost it by 2 or 1 or all of those. So I can boost it from the 1 it is up to a total of 4 if I really wanted to. And then on the far left here, I have an Explorer, basically a boost of 2, which I don't necessarily need to use right now, but will be helpful in going after the next key potentially, or whatever else threat-wise that comes out. But I have a plan here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Explore action and all the power tokens on it in order to get a total of 7. And this will then immediately shuffle down to the bottom, and these will come up. This is going to satisfy what I need to get the Key of Valor. The Key of Valor has a couple interesting actions on it that we can potentially do during the play phase, and I wasn't able to show you this in prior rounds because I didn't have a key, but I do now. One of the things I can do is turn this card, basically just place it on an angle, to use one additional available action. So on the same turn that I did my one use of an action, I can do another one, which could be really handy right now because we got 2 threats out there. That's what I plan to do. So I'm going to be turning this like so. The other thing that I can do is later on, or whenever I feel like it, flip this key over to gain 1 spirit back. So if we take a hit on the dial, flip this card over, and then it's gone. Now that's the one thing to note, is if I just jump right to flipping it over, I don't get to go ahead and use the turn ability on this. So thankfully I'm using the turn one first. So as I mentioned, I don't have what I need in order to pull off taking out the healer because my influence is at 3 and I can't make that any better. I could turn one of these cards in order to try to draw a card to get what I need, or I could just go ahead and take the fight action here, get a 2 value, go ahead and add this Memory of Might to this, a fight action, and that would allow me to have 3 here, which is just enough to take the hobgoblin out, which is what I'm going to do. So let's go ahead and rotate this for my second action here. Again, these are going to change positions. That is going to take out the hobgoblin up here, which is 1 less spirit hit I'll take. I'm not going to be able to do anything about the healer this turn, so this is the first time spirit damage is going to come through, but I'm not done yet on my turn. I still have a couple cards, and I also think I'm going to go ahead and tilt my influence to set myself up to have a total of 4 to go after the healer on the next round. So now I'm sitting a little bit better. I could also potentially right now combine the 2 cards in my hand if I really wanted to put a power-up token on one of these actions, but it's not something I need to do at the moment, so I'll hold on to them for future use. Our spirit is going to drop from 20 down to 19. That's it for the spirit phase, and now all of our actions will be reset. Now let's find out what's coming through the threat deck this time. Another hobgoblin. Wow, there's so many of them. It's worth mentioning, as I stated during setup, that just because you see the same card title come through doesn't mean that the actual abilities or what you need to take it down are going to be the same. The hobgoblins we've already taken down were different values in terms of what we needed to eliminate them. The played ability on the hobgoblin has me shuffle the 1 card in my discard pile, which was the axe I used with my fight action to boost it. It's being shuffled back into my deck. Now I'm going to draw a card up and see what I get. And that card is the Memory of Cold. Ignore a spirit cost of 1 threat this round. So again, this could be really helpful if I can't take out both of them. First thing I'm going to do is use my influence and the power token on it to boost it up to 4. We'll use it like that. This is going to move it all the way down to the bottom, which will shuffle these forward. And that's enough to get rid of the healer, and thankfully, based on the timing, I get a +1 heal, which will boost me from a 19 to a 20. So it is worth taking out the healer because of that +1 boost when it's advantageous for you to get some healing back. Speaking of gaining spirit, we missed gaining 1 additional spirit here when we defeated the first key that we got. However, our spirit is currently at 20, so no need at this point. But going forward, every key we defeat or obtain, we are going to go ahead and boost up our spirit by 1. I'm also choosing not to go ahead and use the Key of Valor up in the top right by flipping it over to gain a spirit because we're already up and maxed out to 20. I'll leave that for later when we need it. I am using Memory of Cold in order to negate the -1 spirit that's coming from the hobgoblin, and as you noted down here, I've gone ahead and tilted this prior to doing this here to put a +1 token on this as we work our way back up to getting the next key, which needs an 8 Explorer. We're all reset and ready to go. Let's find out what's coming out for us this time. We got an Enforcer. The Enforcer threat has arrived. It's trying to grapple us. It is going to remove a power token from your fight action. I don't have a power token in my fight action, so that will not apply, but you'll see this will start hitting our spirit for -1, and we need a 3 fight action to take it out. Drawing from the deck, let's see what card we get. We have Memory of Heart. It says use 1 additional available action. This is going to be handy. So what's unfortunate about this situation is the card I just got, the Memory of Heart, would have been awesome to have in the prior round when I needed some type of requirements across multiple threats that were different. Right now, both of these threats need a fight action, and once I take a fight action once and it's been used, I can't use that exact same one again. This just lets me use an additional available action, which means it'd have to be an influence or an explorer, which is not going to help me because right now in the threat row, those things are not there for me to do. So I need to come up with another plan. That plan may involve turning one of these cards in order to draw a card, hoping to get something more useful. I've gone ahead and tilted this one here to add a +1 power token. I'm now going to go ahead and use Fight. This one's going to turn all the way around for 2, and I'm going to give this a +2 on top of it, which is more than I need. It's 4 total to go up against the Enforcer here and take it out. This card will slide down the row like so, and this Enforcer has been removed. So we'll go ahead and place this in the discard pile. So that's not bad. Now the next question comes to be, is there any reason at all to use this card right now? Probably not. I mean, taking the 1 hit here from Spirit wouldn't be all that bad. We have a way to get it back almost immediately with the Key of Valor, and there could be a better time frame to use this when we need to do a split action between 2 different cards. So maybe I'll hold off on this. The other thing to mention is I'm super close to getting the Key of Light. I have 3, 4, 5, and I need 8, and I also have this card in hand, which gives me 2. So I'm only 1 more power token tilt boost away from being able to pull off grabbing that other key. So we're setting ourselves up for something good if we can pull it off. So our spirit does take a hit of 1 thanks to the Hobgoblin. All of our actions reset. We're ready to go into the next round. We'll go ahead and draw a card, see what we get. And we got a healer. Oh, look at that. And we gain a heal right from the healer to start. So we're right back up to 20 health. We'll go ahead right now. Oh, and it also, yeah, that's it. We're gaining a spirit. I mean, that's great. So we're back up to 20. Drawing this card, we got Memory of Home, which is going to be 1 on the Explorer. Maybe we can do a key this time. This is a really tough one right now, so I think I will go after the key. I can't get myself up to a 5 influence even if I tried. I'm going to be able to go after the key though, thanks to 2 cards in hand that will boost up my Explorer way beyond what I thought I had. So really right now I have a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's everything I need across the board here to be able to pull that off. So we'll just go ahead, rotate this over. These are going to move down the line. You'll see that I've already tilted this one here to power it up because I'm getting it ready to be able to go after the healer in future rounds. These are going to end up in the discard pile. We just gained a key, which means we actually boost up. Remember from the vignette, it says defeated keys give us a spirit boost. Well, we're already at 20, so we don't get it, but we do get the key and all the abilities that are on it. But I'm not going to use that just yet, so we'll place them over here for now. The next question comes to be, with cards that I have, and I definitely have the ability to take additional actions, can I do anything here? Or is there any worth in going after maybe tilting this card to draw a card, potentially? Like that could be worth it because we do have a lot of threats, and going into the next round, we're going to end up having 3 threats in here. So we might need to get ready. I'm going to hold off for now. I think having those available actions are going to come in more handy later on. So I'm going to risk it and hold off. So we're going to stop right here. The other thing I corrected was I made sure that the new key that went up there is upright, because remember, if you tilt, or I should say just turn one of the keys, it gives you an additional available action, which I've spent on one of them. I don't need to flip that one over that I've turned there because I'm already at 20. But as of right now, in ending my turn, I'm going to take 2 hits to my spirit, dropping me to 18. So I'll likely be using the Key of Valor in the next round to bring that back up. So I'll grab my dial right now. We're going to bring that down to 18, and we're now going to go ahead and bring our cards back up. Now let's see what the next threat has for us. It is an Enforcer again. This one is going to remove power tokens from my fight actions. I haven't been bolstering those, thankfully, so nothing bad coming from that. My draw is going to be the Memory of Redemption, and this gives me an influence boost. That's awesome. So we can go after this healer this turn, which if we take out will give us healing as well as stopping some of the spirit hits we've been taking. So this could work out. Plus, this Enforcer needs influence as well. So really it's influence, and fight is what we're going to need across these. So I might need to, well, we could actually pull off quite a few things here. This could actually be a really fun turn. So right now we have 4 over here. I just need 1 more to make this work. This is going to work out perfectly. I'm going to use Memory of Redemption on top of the 3 I get for an influence action. So that's 5. I don't need to use my power token in order to take out the healer up here. So basically turning this like this, the power token can stay because that would have bumped me to 6, and you don't have to throw away your power tokens if you don't make use of them. So this is going to shuffle down to the bottom of the row. These will come up. This is also going to help with future actions, although my fight action now is overpowered from what I need. We hit the healer. When we hit the healer, we not only take her out of the row, we also gain a spirit back. So we're going to go from 18 to 19. And then I'm going to take my Key of Valor and I'm going to flip it over completely, which means it's been basically consumed. And at this point, that is going to give us another point of spirit. And that's going to jump us back to 20. So far, so good. And I'm also going to go ahead and use this card from my hand, use 1 additional available action. So it's going to go in the discard. I'm going to choose to use Fight for 3, which is overkill for what I need it to do. To take out the hobgoblins. It's really awesome to see this many of the hobgoblins being removed because it's going to make things so much easier for me later on. And now there's only an Enforcer left. I do still have a card here I could tilt, so we might as well go ahead and boost up our Explorer. My spirit is going to take a knock down to 19. And we're back up and ready to go. Let's find out what happens next. We're still hunting for keys. We got 2 of the keys of the 5 we need, but we still haven't seen the foe, which is the Goblin King. We know he's at the back half of that deck there, 4 stack in. Another Hobgoblin? This is insane. Now, I've played the Vignette, this first one here, a number of times, as well as some of the other Vignettes. I have not seen the Hobgoblins come out this much at the start, but I do think maybe having to pull through for the keys as I did definitely jumbled some of these guys together, which is pretty wild. So this one says shuffle your discard pile, so it's going to be a much bigger discard pile now. We've got all of these that are going back inside my deck before we draw. Now, the reason it's really cool to be able to take out all these hobgoblins is they are literally the ones that will cause nasty cards to come into your deck. And by getting rid of them all, this will be the 4th one. There is no chance that anything discarded into my discard pile is going to have quick access back into my deck. It could still come back in if I deplete through my own deck and have to reshuffle them in, but this stops them from being immediately dumped into my deck. And you'll see what I mean by that later, because we are going to run into some individuals that are going to cause or would have caused pain for me. But this time around, the hobgoblins didn't do a good enough job in terms of their timing, but in plays off camera, they hammered me. It was not fun. So what we're going to do now is we're going to draw up as I've shuffled those cards back into my deck. We got Memory of Redemption, which is an influence. That's nice. That should help us out. And I think at this point we are going to clear the table here, try to take out as many as we can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and fight first. So I'm going to fight here for 3. That is more than enough to take out the hobgoblin, so that thing is out of here, which is fantastic. This is going to shuffle down the row, pushing these other ones up, and now as you can see, I've made this one go to a 2 and a 3, which is exactly what we need for the Enforcer, but I can't do it, use another use action normally, unless I turn my Key of Light, which I'm going to do. It states to use additional action, turn it, which I've done. Now I'm going to use this, discard the power token. That's going to take care care of the Enforcer, and I've cleared the row. And as the Explorer one here is the only one left, I'm going to go ahead and tilt that one. The other thing I can do is I can flip the key of light, it's way up there on the top right, to draw one memory. So I'm going to do it. So we're going to flip that card completely over, and I'll draw a card in advance so I just have something else in my hand here. That's going to raise my spirit. It's called Memory of Creation. Or if I don't need to raise my spirits, I could potentially use it to combine. Decide not to go ahead and use that spirit boost. I'm currently at 19 spirit, just so you guys understand. I've got 2 keys, I need 3 more, and I need to take down the Goblin King. And that, my friends, is going to wrap up this setup video, as well as part number 1 for Veilwrath, coming from Tristan Hall and Hall or Nothing Productions. Join me in the next episode as we continue to find the remaining 3 keys, as well as taking down the Goblin King foe and heading through the portal you're seeing on screen. We'll be picking up the pace even more so in the next episode as we strive to see if we can complete vignette number 1 without losing our first ribbon. I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen so far, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks again for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.